Thank you, Christos. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My regards to the organizers of this project for giving me this opportunity and for putting together such a forum which addresses the various dimensions of debates around citizenship and statelessness in India. I am an assistant lecturer at General Global Law School, where I've been working with my colleagues on citizenship and statelessness. I led the research and drafting of the Securing Citizenship report as its research supervisor. As you know, over the last few years, the Indian state has proposed various policy measures which have bearing on the citizenship status of many of its residents. In particular, a large number of individuals in Assam face the threat of arbitrary deprivation of nationality. India also has many communities which are stateless, yet India does not have a law on statelessness. Also, international law is rarely a part of contemporary debates on citizenship in India. This context demands engagement with India's international law obligations vis-a-vis citizenship towards its own citizens, as well as individuals who are stateless. That's where Securing Citizenship report comes in. It delves into India's international law obligations towards two different categories of persons. First category is what the report calls precarious citizens in Assam. This term refers to Indian nationals who face the threat of arbitrary deprivation of nationality. Their precariousness is visible by the insecurity of their citizenship status, the risk of statelessness, and the threat of detention and deportation. It is a sociological term. Second category is of stateless persons in India. These are the persons who were not made stateless by the Indian state, but enter India seeking asylum as stateless persons, and they've been residing in India ever since. They would be groups like Rohingyas, Tibetans, etc. The report is divided into three chapters: status, detention, and socioeconomic rights. Each chapter addresses India's international law obligations vis-a-vis both categories of persons. The report argues that India is legally bound to prevent and reduce statelessness. This obligation mandates that India affirm the citizenship of precarious citizens in Assam who are subjected to arbitrary citizenship deprivation procedures. It also argues that India cannot detain precarious citizens and stateless persons, and that it must ensure the full gamut of socioeconomic rights to stateless persons in Indian territory. I am going to discuss the status chapter of the report. The first part of the chapter lays out two intertwined standards in international law: the right to nationality for every individual and the duty of the state to prevent and reduce statelessness. During the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Indian representative, Hansa Mehta, called Article 15 the fundamental right in the UDHR. She said everything else was contingent upon this one right. Of course, the thought has been reflected by other scholars such as Arendt. The report analyzes the right to nationality with reference to the genuine link test, which emanates, as we know, from the Nottebohm decision of the International Court of Justice. The report argues that precarious citizens in Assam have a genuine link to India through their long-term habitual residence, extensive family ties, participation in public life, and their attachment to India, the elements which Nottebohm had specified. And although the Nottebohm decision, of course, had its limitations, yet we argue that these elements of the genuine link are very much applicable to the persons in Assam. The absence of their genuine link with any other nation, specifically as Bangladesh, which is their alleged country of nationality, strengthens their genuine link to India. Stateless individuals in India could also have this genuine link in cases where these elements are present, where they have resided in India for a long time and they show the other forms of attachment to the country as well. The report then examines some jurisprudence from the Human Rights Committee on the right to nationality. And it refers to Article 12, Section 4 of the ICCPR, which prohibits any state from arbitrarily depriving a person to enter his own country. The committee has interpreted the phrase his own country and said that there exist factors other than nationality which may establish close and enduring connections between a person and a country, connections which may be stronger than those of nationality. The report makes reference to two of these cases from the Human Rights Committee, namely Nestrom and Warsame. And the report argues that despite India's reservation to this article in the ICCPR, precarious citizens in Assam enjoy all the rights under Article 12. That is, they would be these persons who cannot be arbitrarily deprived from entering their own country, from residing in their own country. The report then examines cases where Indian courts have appreciated the right to nationality. In particular, in Mangal Sen, it's an old Punjab High Court case where the petitioner had migrated from Pakistan to India. And in this case, the court interpreted the word migrate to hold that the petitioner's movements, ambitions, sentiments, conduct, and habits showed a clear intention to remain and permanently settle in India. And these conditions very much reflect the genuine link test from Nottebohm. And on these grounds, the court held that he was a citizen of India. Also, more recently, in the case of Prableen Kaur, Delhi High Court rejected the allegation that the petitioner's parents were not Indian citizens. They were Afghans and their Indian nationality was doubtful. The court held that the petitioner had never set foot in Afghanistan and had no links to any country but to India. After this, the report delves into the right against arbitrary deprivation of nationality. As we know, this is quite a pertinent issue in Assam. And this section addresses the procedural aspects of this right, due process requirements, procedural standards, international law on nationality, as well as substantive elements that are racial ethnic discrimination and the duty to avoid statelessness. These arguments around procedural aspects include various due process concerns about FTs, namely about appointment of judges, about res judicata, about the ex parte orders, which I'm sure, and although I've not been privy to the previous roundtables, I'm sure many of the participants have raised. And the latter half of that section addresses the legitimate purpose standard as well as the proportionality standard with reference to cases from the European Court of Human Rights. And they also address the fact that that such procedures which arbitrarily deprive persons of nationality must be in accordance with the law. I want to now move on to the second subsection of the chapter, which is states' duty to prevent and reduce statelessness. We argue in the report that this obligation is part of customary international law and it applies to India, despite it not being party to the two conventions. The report also refers to the two African Court of Human Rights cases, Anudo and Penesis, on this issue, as well as some European Court of Human Rights cases. More importantly, the report discusses various Indian cases where the courts have liberally interpreted domestic statutes and recognized India's international obligations in this regard. In a variety of circumstances that the petitioners had in Gangadhar Yashwant Bhandare, in Jan Balaz, and in Ramesh Chenamaneni, the courts made an effort to appreciate India's obligation to prevent and reduce statelessness. The courts held that the petitioners in these cases were Indian citizens. And most notably, in Chenamaneni, the court read that the avoidance of statelessness as an additional implied curtailment on the government under Section 10 of the Citizenship Act, which allows the government to deprive its nationals, its naturalized citizens and registered citizens to deprive them of nationality. The court held that although statelessness is not mentioned in the statute, in the Citizenship Act, and though India is not a signatory to the two statelessness conventions, the status of these two treaties, the customary international law nature of them, and the widespread international state practice limit the scope of the sovereign power when it comes to deprivation of nationality. Moving on, the second part of the status chapter. This chapter is titled Legal Recognition of Statelessness. This section pertains to stateless persons in Indian territory whose citizenship was not deprived as a result of any action of the Indian state. These are groups like the Rohingyas, like the Tibetans, these are groups like the Chakmas, and they have no avenues of return to their own country of nationality as a result of statelessness, which means, as we know, that obviously in the case of Rohingyas, for example, Myanmar would not accept them as its own nationals, although there's been some concerning developments about deportation of Rohingyas from India to Myanmar a few months ago from a Calcutta High Court order. If we look closely at the Indian legal framework, which governs the status of non-citizens, and these would be the statutes such as the Citizenship Act, the Foreigners Act, the Passports Act, as well as the Indian Constitution, they reveal that the different definitional categories used to address these non-citizens are inadequate for guaranteeing the status of guaranteeing the rights of stateless persons. The terms which are often used, such as illegal migrant, foreigner, and citizen in these statutes and in the Constitution, are distinct categories. And all of these categories work on an implicit assumption that the person who is in question, whose citizenship is in question, is in possession of at least one nationality, no matter if that nationality is not Indian. And none of these terms can be used interchangeably for a stateless person. These acts or our Constitution do not define or acknowledge the phenomenon of statelessness. Moving on, the international law on right to nationality, as we know, it commands that the states must prevent and reduce statelessness, that they must naturalize stateless persons in their territory. And we argue this again on the ground that these persons cannot go back to their country of origin. These persons have been residing in India for some time, that they have developed ties to India. And hence the Indian state must recognize these persons formally and issue them identity certificates, which would ensure that they are recognized under law, that they have equal legal personhood. And there is a piece of legislation in India which would allow the Indian government to do so. That is the Passport Rules 1980, formed under the Passports Act. And provision in the Passport Rules would allow the Ministry of External Affairs to grant these certificates of identity. However, the duty of the Indian state under international law, under constitutional law, under human rights law, would not end with issuing these certificates of identity. India must grant them nationality. India must naturalize them in accordance with international law so that they can enjoy their right to nationality. We also discussed some cases of Indian courts on this issue. The report looks at the Delhi High Court decision in Sheikh Abdul Aziz, which concerned a stateless person who had been detained for, I think, over 7 years, if I remember correctly, and who was eventually ascribed the status of stateless. And the case of Namgyal Dolkar, where the petitioner was a Tibetan person, and the court held that the Indian state must naturalize her as well. The report also refers to the Indian Supreme Court decision in the case of NHRC versus state of Arunachal Pradesh. And the courts in these cases have echoed what the report has argued on recognition of stateless persons and naturalization of stateless persons in India. Towards the end of this chapter, we include our recommendations, which, mostly unsurprisingly, include that India should accede to both the statelessness conventions. It must enact a legislation on stateless persons, which must protect them, which also must ensure a path to citizenship for stateless persons in India. That India must ensure that the birth registration system is made more efficient, uniform, and non-discriminatory, and that the identity certificates which would serve to identify stateless persons, which would allow them legal personhood, should not be an impediment to their path to citizenship. More importantly, we argue that when we recommend that India must affirm the citizenship of all persons facing arbitrary deprivation of citizenship, particularly in Assam. The precarious citizens in Assam are at the brink of statelessness, and their citizenship must be affirmed so that they are not at that threat. They're not facing the threat of arbitrary deprivation of nationality anymore. And we also argue that this must be a non-discretionary and non-bureaucratic process. This should be automatically done. There should be no application, because that may introduce some level of complication and some people may be left out. And to finish with, we argue and we recommend that India should amend its citizenship laws to allow more flexible naturalization routes for stateless persons. We eventually go on to talk about the other chapters, but I will limit my presentation to this point. And I would like to add that the report will be released by the end of this month. And we're doing a webinar on 5th December, where the panelists will discuss the themes of the report. We would love to see you there. I'm looking forward to your comments. As I think Christos pointed out, the report is, the draft of the report has been finalized, but my team and I will be writing short posts, we'll be following up on the themes of the report in our upcoming work, and I would love to hear your comments on the report and what could we do further on these issues. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for taking the time.